Hey everybody, hope you're doing well on this Thursday evening. I am still in Hartford, been here a lot this week, looking forward to getting home to the district tonight. Fingers crossed. You can hear in the background, I'll turn the volume off and then I am in a public hearing in the Energy and Technology Committee. I try to be present physically in the room for many of them as possible, but sometimes I do have to be on screen because I have multiple commitments at the same time. So this lots of good testimony in the Energy and Technology Committee tonight, so I'm trying to listen to that. Some of it about the Siting Council and specific issues to our district. I'm going to mute that so that you don't have to listen to both of us talk at the same time. So I wanted to talk about a little bit, we're moving through the process and now lots of public hearings are happening, and tomorrow I have a first committee meeting at which we will vote bills out of committee, moving them from the committee process and making them eligible to be considered by the House and the Senate. We in finance tend to have we have a later schedule than other people because the money committees collect bills from other committees and get referred bills from other committees because they involve the state's finances, and we have to take a look at them as a whole as well. So we have a later schedule, and we had our first public hearing this week. And I had a lot of banter with some other committee chairs about in our finance committee meeting, we had 104 people signed up to testify, and the hearing took about 8.5 hours. I had another friend who chairs the education committee saying he made through his list much more quickly than we did ours, and another one who chairs the public health committee whose hearing went even longer than ours. And sometimes that's just the way it is, meaning you have a lot of exchange between people testifying and the legislators on the committee, and other times people are testifying to the same thing, and it gets you hear the same thing, and it's sort of again and again, it's still fresh to the person who's testifying, so it's really important to be there and be present for every single person. But I and other committee chairs who I respect really believe in, I think moving things along quickly is in the interest of everybody who's testifying, because we do randomly create the speaker list, which means that the person who's first or fifth ought to get the same level of attention as the person who's 104th. So we do that by enforcing the time limits for speakers and for legislators who sometimes are known to talk a lot. And also we have a lot of conversation often about who should you give priority to, and we tend in our committee to give priority to, the state's constitutional officers. So if the Attorney General wants to testify, or the Secretary of State, they get priority because sometimes they table set for the rest of the conversation. We do want to hear where those officers and the executive branch feel about those bills. But I think everybody else, including state legislators or other, ought to be treated with the same, that the public ought to be prioritized. So there's often a lot of back and forth as people are busy, and as I said, I try to be present in the room. I think that's important. Certainly for the committee I chair, I am present in the room. It's hard to do it for the other committees I sit on, but it does make a difference if you are physically there. And I know that, having the remote option, particularly for people who live, where we do, really makes it possible for people to participate in public hearings who couldn't before. So I also think that's a very important option. Before the advent of the Zoom link for public hearings, people had to take an entire day off work, sit around the Capitol all day long waiting to see when their turn would be, because the list was also randomized then, and they just didn't know when it was going to be their turn. And if you have kids and a job and all that, that's really hard. And that meant that we edited out a whole sector of the demographic who really couldn't. It was very difficult for them to meaningfully participate in public hearings. And so as a result, public hearings get longer because more people sign up. But I am in favor of that, so I'm not going to complain about that. We also, because of where we are, so part of this is about the fact that Connecticut has a defined legislative session, which is to say we end this year in May 8th. And so you got to get stuff done by that deadline. Legislators that don't have that deadline have a very different process, and there are advantages and disadvantages to that. I'm used to ours, so I like a deadline. I think it focuses the mind. And so these days, when you move in and out of committee rooms, particularly if you're a committee chair, there's often a whole raft of people outside who want to talk to you about their interest. And sometimes those spontaneous conversations are really, helpful. For example, I started off my day when I arrived in the basement garage, the parking garage. I happened to arrive at the same time as the Appropriations Chair, Tony Walker, and the Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter. And so we had an impromptu budget conversation because we just became a little Ways and Means Committee there. We're having more formal conversations sitting all in a room and next week, but it was really helpful to just have that conversation in that room. Other times, there are people who have interests and they've already made their case, and some people can afford to hire lobbyists and others can't, and so you got to try to be balanced to make sure you hear from everybody, not just those who can afford to have someone waiting outside a committee room to snare you coming through. But those conversations can be useful. You just have to manage them carefully. So what else is happening now is as bills become more, are moving from being just ideas to being more specific, lots of conversations about sponsoring each other's bills. So for example, I'm a member of the Rural Caucus. And so we had a brief meeting the other night to talk about bills that affect rural areas in particular, and to either personally sponsor one another's bills, or in the case of the Rural Caucus, also to write a letter saying we as a group support these kinds of bills. That can be a really symbolic jolt of support for something, and just to listen to other people's bills and to sign on as they become more formal. Often it's a little bit of a waiting game, because if a bill is complicated and it's not your bill, you don't control it. Sometimes it's good to wait a little bit, because bills can change quite a bit between the early stages and when they hit the floor of the House. And you want to make sure you're supporting something that you actually fully support, because I've certainly watched bills take U-turns and head in different directions. So it is a lot of long hours these days. I am hoping to get in my car and head home soon, especially because it's, I think, not raining. I don't know. I haven't been outside much today. Hope you have a great weekend, and see you next week.